When we're doing this contemplation, like with the car or the hurricane that I mentioned, and even the question of who am I my body, who am I my personality, we're doing that one thing at a time, but gradually it broadens and we see one total situation, one total environment of what is actually not me that appears to be me, and leads me to the awareness, in some degree, leads me to the awareness of the pure consciousness. And that pure consciousness operates in some way outward. A word that most of us know that seems to work almost best is to simply call it energy, or the energy of consciousness, and it moves outward. So we're setting the stage here. We've done the stabilizing and all with the yoga piece, and then we're doing all of this contemplation here, and we're coming to see who I am not, and we're seeing the levels of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. We're seeing the interplay of manas, chitta, ahamkara, and buddhi. We're seeing the levels of functioning of the conscious mind, the active unconscious, and the latent unconscious, maybe not perfectly, but gradually, and we're seeing that it's all the flow of one consciousness. And then when we move over and we look at the view that we've been talking about through the eyes of Tantra, that becomes even more clear. And then we're focusing directly on working with the energy of consciousness itself. So it's not a separate thing. It's not a choice that, it's not that which path am I going to follow. I'm going to follow the path of yoga or the path of Vedanta or the path of Tantra, whichever labels we put to those. We're going to see that they all work together. In fact, sometimes the word Vedanta literally comes from the phrase the end of the Vedas. So the wisdom, there's major texts that are some of the oldest texts known to humanity, and the end of each of the Vedas is the wisdom section. And so the end of the Vedas is called Vedanta. That's where that comes from. But sometimes Vedanta is also called jhana yoga. And when we call it jhana yoga, unfortunately, in our common language, jhana yoga has often been interpreted as the yoga of knowledge, which is seen as being intellectual knowledge, where very bright intellectual scholars sit around and have debates over the meaning of words and terminologies, and that's called knowledge. Well, that's not the jhana, that's not the knowledge that's intended. It's the knowledge of knowing in direct experience the center of consciousness, the Atman or Purusha or Brahman, or the Shakti that's one with Shiva. That's the meaning of jhana. So if we're doing the yoga that we talked about, the Yoga Patanjali, sometimes that's called Raja Yoga. If we feel the warmth in our heart, sometimes that's called Bhakti Yoga. If we're doing this activity, the self-awareness activity, right in the middle of our activities of life in families and on the job, sometimes that gets called Karma Yoga. Well, we can end up thinking that these are all separate, and you do one or the other. You do Raja Yoga, or you do Jnana Yoga, or you do Tantra Yoga, or you do Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. But actually all of those flow together. And so the Vedanta is sometimes called Jnana Yoga. The Tantra is sometimes called Tantra Yoga. So we come to see that in another sense, all three of these streams of Yoga, Vedanta, and Tantra are actually different aspects of one word, which is yoga. They're all yoga. What does yoga mean? It means wholeness. It means union. And actually it means the union, the unity, before we subdivided it into parts. So while yes, we can talk about, for convenience sake, we can talk about Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga and Bhakti Yoga and Tantra Yoga. We can talk about Kundalini Yoga. We can talk about Kriya Yoga, which is a popular term. But all of these are really aspect of the one uniform systematic practice that if we want, for convenience sake, we can call the whole thing yoga. Whatever name we give it, or no name at all, it all works in one uniform systematic way. And so here we're using the word blended, as we talked before, because we humans have gotten into the habit of taking unity and splitting it up into diversity. We have taken the practices and processes and divided up into different shelves in the library, so to speak. So since that has already happened over history, since we've already subdivided it, we can study yoga as in Raja Yoga, we can study Vedanta, we can study Tantra, we can learn those individual practices that go with them, but at the same time, at least from the perspective of some traditions, including the one that we're coming from, we see them all as being different aspects of one uniform process.